What's happening, everybody? Tyrone Bowman live. Welcome to the program. This is a news update. I'll get right down to it. For those of you that will be coming on board a little later, I'm talking about the first American casualties of war between Iran, that's being led by the U.S., and the Israeli military. It happened the second day of the war, according to NPR on National Public Radio. 3 American soldiers were killed as U.S. Israeli strikes in Iran continue into the second day. Another 5 soldiers were critically injured. According to the U.S. Central Command, they marked the first American casualties since the start of Operation Epic Fury on Saturday. Coming from Amman, Jordan, and Washington, D.C., 3 U.S. service members have been killed and at least 5 seriously injured or wounded, according to the U.S. Central Command. Quote, several others sustained minor sharp nail injuries and concussions and are in the process of being returned to duty. Major combat operations continue, and our response effort is ongoing, end quote, the military said in a statement Sunday morning. The military also refuted Iran's claims that it had struck USS Abraham Lincoln with ballistic missiles. Quote, the Lincoln was not hit. The missiles launched didn't even come close. It said in a post on social media on Sunday, the Lincoln continues to launch aircraft in support of CENTCOM's relentless campaign to defend the American people by eliminating threats from the Iranian regime. Iranians and others across the Middle East awoke Sunday to a region in turmoil following the killing of Iran's supreme leader in U.S. and Israeli airstrikes. The Iranian government, now without the country's spiritual leader but with a military command structure, will still seemingly intact, continue strikes on Israel and on U.S. targets in Gulf states, Iraq, and Jordan. Israel's military said it began a new wave of attacks in Iran. Explosions were heard in the Iranian capital Sunday morning. Israel's military said it is striking targets belonging to the Iranian terror regime located in the heart of Tehran. The Israeli Air Force said it conducted large-scale strikes to establish air superiority and paved the path to Tehran. Iranian state media Saturday confirmed the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, 86, in airstrikes targeting his office in Tehran. An Iran state broadcaster delivered the news in tears. Khamenei assumed the position of spiritual leader after the death in 1989 of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, leader of Iran's Islamic Revolution. Iran said it had established a 3-person temporary leadership council to govern the country under Islamic law before a panel of Shia clerics chose a new spiritual leader. And in related news, President Trump, let me see if this is going to give us any. All right, in some related news here, President Trump said he is willing to sit down, according to the Atlantic, and talk with Iran. So, according to the Atlantic, Trump tells the Atlantic that Iranian leaders want to resume operations, and this article was written by Michael Shira. One day after launching strikes on Iran that killed Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and embroiled the region in war, President Trump told me this morning that the country's new leadership wants to talk with him and that he plans to do so. Quote, they want to talk and have agreed to talk, so I will be talking to them. They should have done it sooner. They should have given what was very practical and easy to do sooner. They waited too long, end quote, Trump told me in a phone call from his Mar-a-Lago resort shortly before 9:30 a.m. This is according to the reporter. Now, these are not my words. These are reporter's words. And asked whether his conversation with the Iranians would happen today or tomorrow, Trump responded, quote, I can't tell you that, end quote. He noted that some of the Iranians involved in negotiations in recent weeks were no longer alive. Most of those people are gone. Some of the people we are dealing with are gone because that was a big That was a big hit, end quote. He told me they should have done it sooner, Michael. They could have made a deal. They should have done it sooner. They played too cute, end quote. Yesterday morning, in a video posted on social media, Trump called on the people of Iran to rise up against the current regime. Once the bombing campaign ended, now you have a president who is giving you what you want. So let's see how you respond, he said. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and to unleash prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. I asked Trump whether he was willing to prolong the U.S. bombing campaign against Iran to support a popular uprising if one unfolds. Quote, will they continue to get support if it takes some time to overthrow the government? End quote. I asked. Trump was non-committal. Quote, I have to look at the situation at the time it happens, Michael. You can't give an answer to that question, end quote, he said. But the president also expressed confidence that a successful uprising was coming, noting the signs of celebration in the streets of Iran and supported gatherings of expatriate Iranians in New York and Los Angeles. Quote, that is going to happen. You are seeing that. And I think is going to happen. A lot of people are extremely happy over there. And in Los Angeles and in many other places, he told me, in addition to pre-regime change celebrations in several major cities, large anti-war protests have also been held, many of them just a few blocks away. Trump told me that he was pleased with Iranian people's reaction so far, quote, knowing it's very dangerous, knowing I've told everybody to stay in place. I think it's very dangerous place right now. And he told me the people over there are shouting in the streets with happiness, but at the same time, there are a lot of bombs coming down, end quote. For years, the U.S. intelligence community has tracked and disrupted Iranian-led assassination plots against U.S. officials, including Trump, inside the United States. I asked whether he had any indication of renewed Iranian threats against the U.S. homeland since the start of the attack. Quote, I don't want to tell you that, end quote, he said. Soon after our conversation, U.S. military officials announced that 3 U.S. service members were killed in the operation and 5 more were seriously wounded. The first known American casualties of the campaign. Trump told me he expects the attack on Iran will not disrupt Republican efforts before this fall's midterm elections to convince voters that his administration is focused on delivering economic benefits for the country. We have the greatest economy we've ever had, he told me. The word isn't out because people like you don't write about it properly, but the economy is ready to go through the roof, and it already is in many cases. Now, I told you all in an earlier video that there is something far more reaching with this war that's happening. And men and women have to pay attention. They have to really, really listen to what's being said and listen to what's not being said. And it doesn't seem like the interests of the nation are top priority. Why? Because by America being embroiled in a war with Iran, it is a distraction as to what's happening here in America. Trump argued that the attack's efforts on oil markets, which reopened tonight, would likely be less disruptive on American pocketbooks than some analysts have predicted given the early success of the operation. This could have been a huge price increase with respect to oil if things went wrong, quote, close quote, he told me. So we'll see what happens, he added. Before pivoting back to his discussion to attack Iran for the second time since June, people have waited to do it for 47 years. They've killed people for 47 years, and now it's reversed on them, quote, close quote. That was a interview by telephone that President Trump had with the Atlantic. So now that Ayatollah Khamenei is dead, here's what that means for Iran's leadership. So the country's supreme leader led the Islamic Republic for 37 years. Iranian supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's death could be the most existential threat to Iran's Islamist regime in its nearly 50 years. But it doesn't necessarily mean a quick end to the theocracy that controls the country. While Iran has an elected president, Masoud Pezeshkian, real power has rested with its supreme leader. The current regime has only seen one other power shift of this magnitude following the 1989 death of the Islamic Republic founder Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. Khomeini's death on Saturday, which Iranian state media confirmed, leaves no obvious successor. For years, former President Ibrahim Raisi had been favored to replace Khomeini upon the supreme leader's death, but he was killed in a 2024 helicopter crash. Since then, the supreme leader's son, Mojtaba Khomeini, has been spoken of one as possible successor. Here's a somewhat shadowy figure with behind-the-scenes influence who is believed to play an important role in managing his father's wealth. His son wouldn't be the only man in the mix. Khomeini reportedly selected 3 candidates who would take his place during last June's 12-day war. Their names have not been made public. The uncertainty about succession could create an opportunity for the regime's opponents. In a video comments announcing the U.S. strikes in Iran on Saturday, Trump urged Iranian citizens, I just said that, to seize the moment to topple the regime. So that's redundant. I'm not going to repeat that because that's already been talked about. But what's not being talked about, and we have to talk about it, the 3 soldiers who were killed. Even though they term it as casualties of war, no one wants to receive information about their husband, their brother, or their friend being a casualty of war. So the grieving period has already started, and if this war continues to be protracted, it's going to probably lead to more casualties that will take place. So it's in the best interest, really. Pardon me. It's in the best interest, really, that at some point in time they have to sit down and talk. They do. They have to sit down and talk at some point in time in order to come to a consensus as to what is really going to be taking place. I'm looking for something while I'm talking to you all. That's why I'm looking down. Give me a second, I'll have it. Well, I can't get this one up. It would be a good one to read. Is there a possibility that President Donald Trump could be impeached? Well, according to Vanity Fair, with this article, quote, he could be impeached, end quote, Donald Trump's base revolts over war with Iran. MAGA leaders are expressing dismay and anger at the president who campaigned on isolationism and, quote, no new wars, end quote. This is insane. Regime change will result in a bloody civil war, killing hundreds of thousands and creating another massive Muslim refugee crisis. Topping a leader is never as easy as you think. It almost always results in further involvement, a civil war, and chaos. Resist this. That was Charlie Kirk speaking last summer, and just a few months before his unfortunate assassination, in response to Lindsey Graham's call for regime change in Iran. His protest reflected a sentiment pervasive among supporters of President Donald Trump, who campaigned on an end to foreign interventions that have cost the United States trillions of dollars and thousands of lives in this century alone. That Trump's bellicosity is a betrayal of everything the MAGA movement stands for. The United States and Israel attacked Iran early Saturday morning, launching a wave of major strikes across Tehran. They said targeted senior Iranian officials. Trump, in a video address posted to Truth Social, accused Iran of mass terror and said the attacks would target Iran's military and seek to topple the regime. Trump was explicit in calling the operation a war. Quote, the lives of courageous American heroes may be lost and we may have casualties. That often happens in war, end quote. He said, quote, but we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it is a notable mission, end quote. Let me ask you all a question before I read the rest of this article. What do you think about this war that's going on right now? I would really like to know. What do you all think? So the death toll of the attacks is significant. More than 200 people are believed to have been killed in the strikes, according to the Iranian Red Crescent, a number that is certain to climb. The Pentagon announced Sunday that 3 U.S. service members have also been killed and 5 more have been seriously wounded. A strike on a girls' elementary school in southern Iran killed at least 148 people and wounded 95 others. According to state-run media, the New York Times reported that Iranian media believes that most of the dead are likely children. Before the attack, Trump was spotted dancing to, quote, God Bless the USA, end quote, at a gala being held at his resort on Friday night. Later, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu posted a photo of a phone call with Trump. On his desk was a map of the Middle East and Tim Bouvier's book, Allies at War, an account of how Winston Churchill worked to pull the United States into World War II. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Trump monitored the situation overnight at his Mar-a-Lago resort alongside members of his national security team. You know, I'm an avid reader, and I've read Winston Churchill's, I've read rather Tim Bouvier's book, Allies at War, account of how Winston Churchill duped America, or goaded and duped America into joining in with World War II. See, the problem with war is this, and this is what a lot of folk don't want to talk about. You have deaths that occur. People get rich during times of war. Manufacturers of weapons, artillery, the trucking manufacturers, they make a lot of money. Don't forget about the bombs and everything that are being used. They make tons and tons of money as well. The profitability factor is always high because billionaires are always looking for an opportunity to enlarge their financial portfolios. My God, how much money do you need to live? Because you can't take it all with you. Meanwhile, we're gearing up for the midterm elections, and before you know it, November is going to be here. The spring will go quickly, and the summer will go even faster. And then November will be here, and there are many questions that are lingering in the air that have to be asked pertaining to the economy, housing, homelessness, joblessness, inflation regarding food and gas. What about the servers, men and women, who work in the service food industry? Why are they being taxed on tips that they give when they barely make enough money just to survive? If it wasn't for tips, they will probably not make a lot of money at all. You know, when I go to restaurants, and I go quite frequently, I tip very generously. I'm not going to tell you how much, but it's a lot. Because I understand what they do. Point blank. One of the questions I always ask the host or the hostess, what was your biggest tip that you received today? And then I take it from there. Because the economy must continue to flourish here in America. Might not be what folk want to hear, but it's true. Anyway, I'm going to continue to read. The war is certain to widen a growing rift in Trump's base over his military adventurism abroad. Tucker Carlson, one of Trump's most prominent supporters, argued for his election in 2024 on the basis that his opponents would drag the United States into unnecessary wars, which was a lie. Kamala Harris told y'all what was going to happen, and y'all didn't listen to her. You didn't believe her. You said she was a liar. Point blank. She said on more than one occasion, the former vice president laid out in no uncertain, plain details, step by step. Everything that she said is happening the way that she said it. It was all smoke and mirrors. And the only reason why she was, and don't give me that crap because she was a Democrat. No, because she was a black woman and a Democrat. Let's tell it the way it is. I'm not going to pussyfoot over here on this channel. She was a black woman, a smart, intelligent, articulate black woman who was the vice president of the United States of America, a heartbeat away from the presidency. And they did not want her elected. Where Joe Biden made his biggest mistake at, and I've said it before and I'm going to say it again, he should have never entered the presidential campaign for re-election because Biden was too ill, too sick. You don't wait until the last minute to throw somebody in a marathon race that's already started, and you expect them to catch up and win the marathon. That's insidious. She was never going to win because she was thrust into it. People gave all kinds of money. That's not how you necessarily win elections. You need money. But the time will come. And this is a stipulated fact. America will have a woman president before all is said and done, whether folk like it or not. The misogynistic male hierarchy that is transcended to the White House in this nation is going to come to an end. They're going to have a female president at some point in time. And I'll make another prediction. The Republican Party, once all this is said and done, they are going to try to redeem themselves the same way that the revisionists of history rewrite history over and over again, like with the Black Wall Street. The whole riot and everything that happened down in Tulsa, Oklahoma, all because of a lie. The burning down and destruction of black businesses in the Greenwood section. Now you go down there, they're trying to eradicate and erase all semblance of what occurred down in Tulsa. They're trying to rewrite history and pretending that doesn't happen. Let me show you something I have in my possession here. Hold on, I'm going to my little desk. This is a book I'm currently reading right now. I'll turn it around, but the wording is not going to come across too well because I would have to flip the screen and I can't do it. But this is a book I'm reading right now. It's called Built from the Fire: The Epic Story of Tulsa's Greenwood District, America's First Black Wall Street. 100 Years in the Neighborhood That Refused to Be Erased, written by Victor Luckerson. Once I'm finished reading it, I'll talk about it. So getting back to the point that I'm making here, the Republican Party is going to try to redeem itself, reinvent itself, repackage itself at some point in time. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to nominate a black man to become president. Oh, it's going to happen. The next male black president will come from the Republican Party. And you know what? That person will win. Because they're going to present themselves as a much more kinder, much more compassionate, a much more understanding and conservative party. So the war is certain to widen a growing rift in Trump's base over his military adventurism abroad. Tucker Carlson, one of Trump's most prominent supporters, argued for his election in 2024 on the basis that his opponents would drag the United States into unnecessary wars. In comments to ABC News correspondent Jonathan Carlson called the attacks on Iran, quote, absolutely disgusting and evil, end quote, and said they would deal a blow to his movement, quote, this is going to shuffle the deck in a profound way, end quote, Carlson said. Kurt Mills, executive director of the American Conservative magazine, has described Trump's rule as a, quote, imperial presidency, end quote. In the interview with Vanity Fair, he said Trump's core appeal in the 2024 campaign was an anti-globalist, anti-imperial message. Now it just seems overt. The administration serves rich people and does wars for foreign countries. It plays too ruthlessly into the, I think that's my article. God darn it. I just lost my article. See if I can get it back, ladies and gentlemen. I'll find it. All right, we're back. So Kurt Mills, the executive director of the American Conservative magazine, has described Trump's rule as an imperial presidency. In an interview with Vanity Fair, he said Trump's core appeal in the 2024 campaign was an anti-globalist, anti-imperial message. Now it just seems overt. The administration serves rich people and does wars for foreign countries. It plays so ruthlessly into the Democrats' oligarchy messaging, it's kind of astonishing that they're not more anti-this. It seems served up on a blanking platter. It is a 2-to-1 unpopular war, and it's weirdly associated with the administration's potential corruption, quote, close, quote. The only people who are profiting right now are the rich and the powerful, the billionaires, the zillionaires. That's it. Nobody else. I'll say it again. The only people that are making money are the rich. And you know what a lot of folk, and I have to say it because they'll never admit it, you've got white people who are suffering just as bad as everybody else economically in this nation right now. Even those who voted for him are having it hard. Oh, yes, they are. They're having it hard down in the Southland part of America, in the rural part of America. But many of them don't want to admit it because they don't want to admit that they were wrong. Money is drying up for everyday people, and it's flourishing among the rich and the powerful and the wealthy. They're getting tax breaks out of the wazoo, tax shelters, tax packages. That's what the big, beautiful bill was all about. What about everyday people? Where are their tax breaks? Where are their tax incentives? Where do they get the financial help that they need in times of crisis? The average family does not have an emergency fund set aside to handle crisis. because they got to live from paycheck to paycheck. And in some instances, families have to move in with each other temporarily just to survive. I'm talking about the economy right now. All is not as glossy and beautiful and picturesque as they're trying to make it seem and be. Because if it were, then men and women would be happy about so many things that are happening in the nation. Non-prominent voices who supported Trump in the 2024 campaign are once again condemning his administration publicly. Quote, by launching this illegal war of aggression against Iran, Donald Trump has betrayed the American people and his own base, none of whom wanted this, end quote, said Dave Smith, a comedian and political commentator who endorsed Trump in 2024 after accusing the Democratic Party of becoming war hawks. Now, how dumb you were. You accused the Democratic Party of being war hawks, Dave Smith. So who are the war hawks now? Because it certainly isn't the Democrats. The Democrats were demonized, remember? We told you all about Project 2025. No, but majority of the people didn't want to listen. They said it was a lie. People disavowed ever knowing these people. Now, I don't know them. Who are they? I've never met them. But all the time behind the scenes, it was all being planned out. Just like even now. Things are being planned out secretly behind the scenes because that's what business men and women do. They create a scenario and want you to react to it just to see what will happen when they launch whatever plan they want to launch in terms of firing everybody. They want everybody in chaos. So they pit people against one another to spread a rumor and spread it around the company just to see how people will react. And a lot of what's happening right now is biblical prophecy being fulfilled before our very eyes. And it's not the end of the world. Far from it. Rich Barris, a pro-Trump pollster, wrote on X, quote, no, sorry, I don't think regime change suddenly became good policy or politics just because Donald Trump did it, end quote. And Andrew Tate, who has received support from the Trump administration, reacted, quote, nobody wants this war, end quote. Blake Neff, a producer for Charlie Kirk, said his, quote, right-leaning friends were expressing outrage at the attacks. He posted a few effing this, end quote. This is extremely depressing, never voting in a national election again. This is highly demotivating, Mills said. Look at the poll numbers since the 12-day war. That is when the vibe shifted. The media narrative on 2024 is that this was the podcast bro election. If you accept that it was a podcast bro election, it is relevant that the podcast bro hate this. And if you say that Trump built his enormous new coalition that's going to govern for 1,000 years, and then you look at political independence, and they hate it more than the Democrats. And the way it's going to matter is that no one's going to show up to the polls in 2026. Republicans can legitimately lose the Senate, which is political malpractice. He could be impeached for any of these things, end quote. Y'all don't want to believe it, but MAGA is going to turn against Republicans in November. They are. People do not want war. People want financial stability. They want to be able to pay their bills. People want jobs. They want good homes. They want to be able to live a comfortable lifestyle in America without the threat of war. They want to be able to go on vacations and travel abroad without becoming the target of being kidnapped because of whatever's going on in the nation. People want family gatherings to be happy again. They want to be able to sit down together and have meals. But right now, there's a spirit of apathy that's in the land. And this video is not for likes and clicks and views. I'm talking because I'm serious about the topic we're talking about. And it must be articulated in a way that is being conveyed so that men and women can know and understand for themselves. We have to read for ourselves. Because if you don't read and research and write for yourself, the propagandists on both sides will tell you anything. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the former Congresswoman, who is perhaps the most acute example of a Trump diehard who became disillusioned by his betrayal of MAGA ideas, was unsparing in her response. Greene called the administration, quote, sick effing liars, end quote. In one of many posts condemning the attacks, she shared a clip comparing Trump to Lord Farquaad, the villainous tyrant from Shrek, who told his subjects, quote, some of you may die, but it's the sacrifice I'm willing to make, end quote. These Trump supporters can be forgiven for believing he would focus on domestic issues over foreign intervention. He made that promise regularly on the campaign trail as he rallied against the opponents, from Hillary Clinton to Kamala Harris, of pushing the United States into what he called endless wars. Quote, I can tell you, you're not going to have a war with me, Trump told a rally crowd in 2024. The about face has but high-profile members of his administration in an awkward position. Yeah, they're put in it. How does Tulsi Gabbard, who once literally sold T-shirts exclaiming, no war with Iran, explain this attack? Or Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who said in endorsing Trump, he wants to end the grip of the neocons on U.S. foreign policy? Or J.D. Vance, who published an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal in 2023 declaring Trump's best foreign policy, not starting any wars, and told an interviewer in 2024 that Harris was sleepwalking us into the war with Iran, end quote. Well, when 2028 comes around, people's memories are going to come to life, and they're going to remember. They're not going to forget. People think they're going to forget, but they're not. They're going to remember everything that went down. I'm going to finish reading this article because it's just another paragraph. The idea of Donald Trump, the dove, has always been divorced from reality. Yes, Trump managed to avoid starting any new wars in his first 4 years in office, but he embraced aggressive militarism just as much, if not more, than his predecessors. He lifted the constraints Barack Obama placed on drone strikes, carrying out more in the first 2 years of his presidency than Obama had in 8. 65 American soldiers died in combat during Trump's first term, and nobody said a word about it. According to the Pentagon, far more than died under Biden. In his second term, Trump has bombed 7 different countries and launched regime change wars in Venezuela and Iran. Of course, Trump is the only person who can define what MAGA is, as he regularly reminds his followers. MAGA loves it, Trump said, after the United States invaded Venezuela and seized its leader, Nicolas Maduro, sparking outrage among the more anti-intervention factions of his base. MAGA loves what I'm doing. MAGA loves everything I do. MAGA is me. MAGA loves everything I do, and I love everything I do, too. Quote, close quote. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the economy, it's still about the American economy. That's what all this is about. The question was asked one time during the presidential campaign, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? So that's the question I ask as we head into the midterm elections. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Think about it. Never surrender. Never quit.